On today's video, I'm going to be comparing the Nike VaporFly Next Percent 3 with the Nike VaporFly Next Percent 2. Now the VaporFly's been around a while and it's a favorite racing shoe for many runners, elite as well as non-elite, for 5Ks all the way up through to the marathon distance. But Nike's made a few changes over last year's version of the shoe. But did these changes make the shoe better or worse? Are they worth the money that they're asking for? And probably most importantly, is it the right shoe for you? Well, those are the questions that we're going to try to answer today, so be sure to stick around. Hi everybody, I'm Tim and this is Run Tall, and I post running videos every week. So if you're a running nerd like I am, consider subscribing to the channel and don't forget to click the notification bell so you'll be notified each time that I upload new content. I'd love to have you here and be a part of the Run Tall family. Now, before I get into it too far, I do want to get a disclosure out of the way. I did purchase these with my own money, so there's no chance for bias, and I always do my best to keep my own personal bias out of the conversation, regardless if a product or shoe has been sent to me for the purpose of review. Now, I put a lot of miles in the second version of the shoe, the Nike Next Percent 2. I ran my very first marathon in them just about a year ago today. And they did absolutely great. I love the shoes. And then after running that marathon, because I'd put a few training miles in them ahead of time just to make sure that they were going to do well for me, because you don't want to do anything new on race day. And I wanted to put a few miles in them, just like I said, to make sure that they were going to work. And they did great. They felt absolutely amazing. I was able to run a Boston qualifying time in these, and I had no issues with comfort at all. So they performed really well. Absolutely loved it. After that marathon, I did move these into my training slot, and I continued to run them up until I got 150 miles, and then they just went dead. Especially the Zoom X foam up in the forefoot of the shoe, they just weren't any fun to run in, and I was starting to get concerned that it might even cause me some issues if I did keep running in them. So as I should, I retired those shoes out of my rotation, but I had bought a new pair. So I do have a new version or a new pair of the Next Percent 2s as well. And I keep these around in case I want to run or race in them, whether it's a 5K, like I said, all the way up through to a marathon. It's a good marathon choice. Now with the newest version of the shoes, I just started putting the miles on them. I don't have a ton of miles in them. I have about 20, 25 miles. I've had 4 different runs. I think my longest one was more than a 10K, I think around 8 miles, something like that. So I just want to let you know what my experience is in these as well. So I will put a lot of miles in these. You can bet that I'm going to run these up until basically I can't run in them any longer. I'm guessing it's going to be around 150 miles, much like the previous version of the shoe is. So let's talk about some of the similarities, and then we'll talk about the differences. So right off the bat, the first one that comes to my mind is the price tag. So here in the US, they stayed the same. The second version of the shoe cost $250 US, and they didn't jerk up the price at all. They still cost $250 US here, and that's retail price. Now you can find these on sale now that these have been released. So if you look around and you're a VaporFly fan, you might score on some pretty good deals that are out there right now. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here a little bit later in the video. So the price tag has remained the same. They're still using a version of Flyknit up here for the upper, the Zoom X foam, midsole, and then a carbon fiber plate that's embedded within that Zoom X foam. So full Zoom X foam from heel to toe, carbon fiber plate, all that is the same. The other thing that remains the same is the offset. So you still have 38 millimeters of stack height in the heel, 30 millimeters up in the forefoot for that 8 millimeter offset. There is a slight difference, and we'll talk more about the differences here in a minute, in the amount of Zoom X foam up in the forefoot, but they were able to maintain that 8 millimeter offset being the same by reducing the width of the outsole material. So those are the things that remain the same. So what are some of the differences? Well, let's start with the weight of the shoe. The newest version comes in a little bit lighter. These are 6.5 ounces for a US men's size 9, which is what I wear and what I put on my scale. So 6.5 ounces for version 3. Version 2 is 6.9 ounces, so slightly heavier. Not a huge difference, but they're a little bit heavier. With the uppers, now we still have a Flyknit material, but the version 3 is a softer yarn, and it's a little bit more comfortable. It fits well to my foot. I found it to be very comfortable. There's a bit more room up in the toe box. So in the second version of the shoe, it's just a little bit more narrow. And so your toes can feel a little scrunched at times, especially for me, for my pinky toe, for example. but I do feel like I have more room in the third version of the shoe. I get a solid lockdown in both shoes. I didn't have any issues with that, but the third version feels maybe a little bit more snug and secure across the midfoot section. And part of that reason is because they did narrow up the midfoot section. So I feel like my foot is being wrapped just a little bit more snug across this area. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that you've got a little less or a little bit more narrow here. So the hourglass shape is a bit more pronounced in version 3. So consequently, that material starts kind of down underneath your foot a little bit more and then wraps around. And when you cinch these laces down, you really get snugged in. So I love that feeling. Now these are great. These are absolutely great. I've had no comfort issues in the second version of the shoe, but the comfort of the upper on these, just a little bit better, just a little bit better. Now I do feel like though in the heel of the shoe that you've got a little bit more space. So I do feel like the heel is a bit more airy. So while I do feel locked down and secure, and I didn't have any issues, with my foot sliding forward maybe and hitting that front of that toe box at all. So I felt good locked in there, but locked in and loose in the heel. So, but I didn't have any heel slippage really. So even though it was a little bit airy back there, I didn't have any blisters. I didn't have any rubbing on my Achilles. So it's still super comfortable right out of the box. And I have to say that that is something that is true for the second version of the shoe for me as well. So both of these, the comfort has been perfect for me right out of the box. I think they just got a little bit more comfortable upper on the third version of the shoe. The lacing system, basically the same. They still have the offset lace system, these lockdown laces that have a bit of a ridge on them. So when you snug them up, they kind of hold tight into those eyelets. And, of course, I always double knot and sometimes triple knot my laces, but those extra little bumps there on the laces themselves just help hold all that in place. So you don't have to worry about your shoes coming untied, because that has happened to me. It's probably happened to everybody, but even sometimes in other laces, even when double knotting them, they come loose. But I've never had that happen in either version of the shoe. And again, I've had a lot more miles in these, a lot more experience, but again, the laces have always held tight and comfortable. Now the tongue, it's lightly padded up towards the top where you would want it to be, and it's just enough there to reduce any kind of pressure, especially if you're using a heel lock knot. Sometimes you can get that pressure, you can feel the pressure of the laces on the top of your foot. I did not have that happen in either of these shoes. So I think they got just about right, but again, it's really lightly padded. So we're not talking about, a luxurious tongue at all, but perfect, I think, for a race day shoe. So that is the upper. It is a lot more breathable. Look at all those holes. So that is a major difference from the second version of the shoe, both using a fly net material, but these are much more breathable in version 3. So if you live in a hotter climate, that's where it's going to come into play. And right now in Michigan, it's getting warm. It's nearly, it's like 85 degrees today, and I think it's going to be close to 90 here coming up soon. So you can bet I'm going to be enjoying having that little extra airflow, keeping my feet cool out on the runs, because it's not great if your feet start to sweat. And these are great. These are good. These are really good, but somehow Nike's found a way to improve on the airflow over the next percent too. So good job, Nike. I love the changes that you made to the upper. I think you did a really good job there. So let's talk about the midsole, because we have some changes here as well. Most notably, you can see that they changed, for example, the heel design. So I think you got a little bit more of that ZoomX foam back here. It's very similar to what they did with the AlphaFly version 2. So you can see they kind of squared that up as well. This isn't quite as squared off, but it's similar. It's very similar how they got that shelf off the AlphaFly 2 now. Kind of went the same direction with the VaporFly 3s. So I guess we shouldn't have been surprised by that. Nike does tend to, once they start moving in a direction, we're likely to see this kind of a heel style design on many more of their upcoming models as they drop. So I found it to be really comfortable. They do have some of these cutouts here, right here, and it's a bit wider right here with the foam. And that feels really good. I felt really stable. I felt stable in the heel, more so going around corners. And the route that I run, that I train on, I make a lot of turns, lots and lots of turns. And I didn't feel unstable at all. And I sometimes can feel a little bit unstable in the second version of the shoe. They're great going straight down the road. They they're not my favorite when I'm cornering because I can get a little bit of wiggle in my ankle from these. So that was another good change for me for this version of the shoe. And again, I love the next percent too, but I'm enjoying the upper a little bit more, and I like the redesign of the midsole with the ZoomX foam here. The carbon fiber plate, you still get that same pop off the toe, a nice big spring when you move through your gait cycle. It just makes you want to move fast. It is a fairly aggressive plate, but boy, you just feel like you're bouncing off the ground, almost like you got springs under your feet. So I really enjoy that. You put that pressure on and it just kind of pops you off your toe. So I always have enjoyed running in the Next Percent 2, and I enjoy running in the Next Percent 3, maybe just a little bit more because they did make the outsole material a little thinner, which gave room for an extra millimeter maybe of that ZoomX foam. But because they widened it out a little bit and you got this little extra cutout here, they do feel softer. Somehow they feel softer. These are lighter, slightly a bit more ZoomX foam, but they do feel a little bit more cushioned when you're running in these. And I had no comfort issues when I ran my marathon in these shoes. These are just a little bit better. I think going to marathon distance, these are going to be much more enjoyable to run. I think at the end of the run, your feet are going to appreciate having that little extra something up in the forefoot of the shoe. So let's flip them over. We'll take a look at the outsole. Oh, and we do have this bit of a cutout back here as well. Again, probably to reduce the weight a little. Other than that, I don't know that it made a big difference to me. I didn't really notice much going on different in the midsection of the shoe in terms of, any being loose or anything along those lines. So I think that cutout there is mainly just to kind of reduce some weight. Another big change here is the outsole. I'm not a fan. And I know it's light, and I like the waffle pattern because I think that does give you maybe a bit more grip when you're out on the road. But the other day I had these out. I think it was like maybe the third time I had these out, and I don't run on particularly difficult terrain. It's just out here on some tarvy, some concrete sidewalks, that kind of thing. But there's always going to be some type of gravel that's out on the road. And what happened is right where those waffles are, right where there isn't protected, that ZoomX foam, I got a stone that's stuck in there, and it cut right in, and I could hear it hitting the plate in there. And I thought, oh no, what's going on? I had visions of that plate maybe even shattering because it just, it made that crunch sound when I hit the ground, and it was kind of startling. And I'd only gone a few steps. So I had to stop, and I had to pull that stone out. And since I'd only run, that was my third time running them, and I'd already had, that kind of thing happen, it just makes me wonder how often is that going to happen. And what a bummer that would be if it happened during a marathon when I'm trying to set a PB, and I got to stop and fuss around with the outsole. So I'm not sold on the outsole. And more time will tell. Maybe that was kind of a one-off. I did have an issue with a stone sticking in, I think it was these shoes. I think it was the AlphaFly Next Percent 2, but it only happened that one time, and it was right up there where they got the cutout. So maybe that'll be it. Maybe it won't happen again. I'll let you know as time goes on, because like I said, I'll definitely run these shoes up more and more over time. So I'm gonna keep running in them. I like the stability of the forefoot of the shoe, and let's talk about that too, because here's a couple of changes that they made in terms of the width. The forefoot of the shoe up here is a little bit wider. Not so much in terms, if you look at the widest point of each shoe, that's about the same. So I put them up next to one another. But the difference is up here towards the toe box. It's just more gently rounded up here. So you have more of a landing platform overall in the forefoot here. And that does give you just that little extra bit of stability. And then it's a little bit wider back in the heel. And that too adds to some stability. So overall, I like the changes that they made to the upper. I love the changes that they made to the midsole. They still feel really snappy but comfortable to run in. And I'm not sold on the outsole, whether or not that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing, because these are already not a durable shoe. Again, I had to retire my first pair after 150 miles. I have 300 miles on, although I did overrun those a little bit, but I put over 300 miles on the AlphaFly version 1. So they're not a durable shoe to begin with, and making that change may have made them a little less durable. So you might even get a few less miles. But again, time will tell. So do I think it's worth the money? Well, right now you can buy these. I've seen them on sale for $150 US. So it's $100 less. I mean, you can't even buy basic daily trainers for that price hardly anymore. A good daily trainer is going to cost you $130, $135, and that's just a going rate. A more advanced daily trainer, maybe a little bit more cushion, something like that's going to run you $150. Well, you can buy these for $150 right now. So they're not super durable, but for $150, if I was looking at getting into the VaporFly series, I would probably just buy the Next Percent 2 and save the $100 because these are a better shoe. So if you're paying retail, and you got 250 here and 250 here, that's a no-brainer. I'd buy the Next Percent 3s, without a doubt, because they're a little bit more cushioned. They still have the pop off the toe, and I like the fit of the upper. So it's kind of a no-brainer. But if you can save yourself $100, why not? It's a very similar feeling to it. Maybe they don't have quite the amount of cushion in the front. And if you're a neutral shoe runner, that stability in the heel probably isn't going to be that big a factor for you in your decision making anyway. So that's kind of where I stand. I'm happy that I bought these. I'm hoping I can get at least 150 miles out of them. And I'll let you know as we go on down the line. All right, so that is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed making it for you. As always, run tall, run strong, be kind to one another. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Run tall with them.